Hi, I'm Landon Harvey, and welcome to Landon Live. Today I have with me special guest, comedian, ventriloquist, magician, Mike Palma. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing some great advice as well as your story into the arts. So why don't we go ahead and get going?
Sure.
And by the way, to those of you tuning in, feel free to comment your questions for Mike in the comments below. Let's
Everybody
go ahead
but
and
Clemente.
yeah, everybody but Dan Clemente. Exactly. Mike, which one of these aspects did you get into first? Was it comedy? Was it ventriloquism? Was it magic?
I think magic and ventriloquism first. When I was a
Okay.
kid, my father was a little amateur magician. He played around with ventriloquism and got me started in both.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
very young age, but three,
So
four years old. Yeah.
when did you do your first show? Was it in your teens? Was it later on?
I did my first show when I was 19. I remember like it was yesterday. I was using an old Lovick figure I still have,
Mhm.
and I was using old Paul Stadelman material. And yeah, it was pretty bad.
Well, that's interesting. Up till now, I've heard that most people started on the mayor stuff, so it's interesting that you did different material. When did you make the transition into doing going from what was your first show again that you had
19, it
performed?
was a retirement community
Okay,
in the area I lived, yeah.
okay,
So
that's great.
then I went off to college.
And so today you're known for doing many comedy clubs as well as retirement communities. Could you talk a little bit about which one you got into first?
Well, like I said, I did the retirement community first, and then when I was in college, I was at the right place at the right time. It seemed
Sure.
like I was in St. Petersburg, Florida, and there were comedy clubs all over the place. There was one in St. Pete Beach called Coconuts Comedy Club. Up
Mm,
the road on 19 going into Clearwater, there was Ron Bennington's comedy scene. Now, Ron was a radio show, and Ron Bennington had his own comedy club in Clearwater, and now Ron is actually has his own talk show on Sirius XM. So I could still hear him. He's a great guy, very very funny. But he had a place. We did open mics on Sunday night there. Coconuts had a different night, and then Tampa, we would go in off of Kennedy Boulevard and go to Comedy Works. And Comedy Works was actually um, one of those comedy clubs you would hear Johnny Carson go, and he just got done performing at the Comedy Works in Tampa, Florida, and you go, whoa, and you're performing there, and it was
right.
really a cool club. But there were about four or five nice comedy clubs, Crackers Comedy Club on Del Mabry, that boy, it was a lot of fun.
Wow. So when you started into the comedy club scene, were you a magician and a ventriloquist in your show and a comedian, or were you one?
Just vent, just vent.
Really? Okay. Wow. How was the comedy and the evolution of what you had started with?
Actually, I did very well on my first open mic. I remember Ron Bennington's place, and I we only had 5 minutes. And if you had went
Mhm.
over, they gave you the flashlight in your face and get off the stage. But
Right.
I had a tight 5 minutes, probably 3 or 4 minutes actually. I did it. I came off stage, and two guys approached me and they said, "Hey, what are you doing next weekend?" I'm like, "Nothing." They said, "Well, we're gonna have you do a guest set at Crackers Comedy Club." And I said, "Okay, great. What's a guest set?" And they said, "You got to do about 5 or 10 minutes." And I said, "Oh, great!" And so I said, "Yeah, that'd be fun." And Crackers was a nice club. They had two shows, one at 7 o'clock, or yeah, 7 o'clock and a 9 o'clock show. And when I got there and I saw this place was like, whoa, beautiful. And
Hmm.
there was a comedian named Happy Cole performing. He was the headliner. And there was another guy doing a feature act, doing just 30 minutes. And he was getting filmed for Showtime. And here I am, second time on stage. Second time on stage doing a guest set, going, what have I gotten myself into? Well, the
Yeah.
first show went so well, they said, can you stick around for the second show? And I said, yeah, sure. But we need you to do 5 more minutes. Okay. I had 5 minutes. That's all I had. So
Right.
I called up my father. My father, I get my sense of humor from my father and my grandmother, actually. My grandmother
Okay.
was so funny.
Hmm.
Um, I'd call my father up and say, "Hey, they want me to do 5 more minutes." He said, "Do the thing your grandmother used to do, the little song and the little rhyme." And I did it, brought down the house, and I was like,
Wow.
yeah, I was hooked.
Wow. So your grandmother was she a comedian or a performer, or was this just something?
Okay, I'm going to tell you this. Every person I have ever met, my father and my grandmother were from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
You meet people from Brooklyn, they're going to tell you the way it is, and half the time it's funny. They have
Mm,
names for people like, look at Mr. Big. They wouldn't say Mr. Like somebody who would sweater, like, hey, there goes the sweater. Okay. They had these funny names, and it wasn't anything to be derogatory or anything like this, but it was just how they were in that neighborhood. And they were just very funny, very quick. Boom. You say something, they had a comeback, and you were like, and so, yeah, they were the funny ones. They had the charisma, man.
wow. That's truly neat. So, what was the character that you had started with in doing this bit?
It was just a cheeky boy. It was actually the Mayor Studios Jingo figure.
Okay.
And it was a Jingo that never looked like a Jingo. None of them ever did.
Right.
And yeah,
So, how did do you still use this character in your show, or did this?
you know what? I This is something I talk to a lot of people about. I think cheeky boys are good if you have a good routine. I think Dave Strassman with Chuck Wood
Mhm.
is the ultimate cheeky right now.
Right.
You don't see a whole bunch of professional ventriloquists using the cheeky anymore. I mean, they're more characters.
Hmm.
So I've kind of gotten away because I find it actually harder to write for just a cheeky than it is to write for a character. And
Exactly. Yeah.
that's the thing that I said, it took 70 years, 60, 70 years for Jeff Dunham to go along and change the way ventriloquism is in the sense of bringing ventriloquism back into uh, social media, what you want to call it.
Right.
But he's doing it with different characters. There are no cheeky boys in his shows, and he may have
Hmm.
started off with them, just like
Sure.
we all do, but
Hmm.
he didn't end up with one.
Well, what was interesting also, I'm sure you've heard Jeff Dunham's story, where he went through a plethora of cheeky boys, and then he had Verna build him a bunch of stuff until he got to Peanut, and
Yeah,
and essentially Peanut is Jeff's cheeky boy, but it's just a different way to perform it, you know?
and to some degree, I think you kind of can say all your figures are cheeky in
Right.
you know, but it comes down to a character. It's just not a cheeky boy face, a Danny O'Day or a
Hmm.
Jeremy. And like I said, Winchell and Jimmy Nelson were just absolute geniuses with their figures. But
Sure.
you know, I I'm a character man. I like different characters. And what you're
Sure.
making your characters, I'm like, oh man, that's out of this world.
So I'm curious, you had this cheeky boy puppet that you were using when you
Yep.
started. What was
Yes.
the first character that you would develop that you were like, oh, this is great, and I'm gonna use this for the rest of my
Um,
time as a performer?
I kind of went that route with I had a little old lady, but she was a nice little. She was kind of. She wasn't really nice. She was just kind of like flirtatious, and then I
Mm,
started, after a while, um, and that was the thing. You start doing things that everybody else had been done already. I mean,
right.
you think of the sweet old little old lady, and um, y- you think of. I think of because that was the first old lady I ever saw was Dick Weston,
Mm,
and just don't you get these people that inspire you and you want to be like them, but at some point you've got to make your own character and be something different.
sure. Did you find that it was hard for you to play the straight man when you were creating this character that went from the cheeky boy to the puppet, or did you find that writing for yourself with the puppet was easier that as it became more of a character?
It's funny because I write so much for the character, and when the
Hmm.
character is on, the dummies rarely screw up a line, but me, I'll flub and whatever. And
Right.
I'm looking forward to convention this year because the one thing that I see in my act that it doesn't matter how long you've been doing this, you can always improve on something. And when I watch my act, and one thing I need to do is work on how to, and it's almost going to be turning myself into a character more so I know how to react better with the figure
Hmm.
rather than how do you like school, Jimmy? Closed. Oh, stop doing that. You've got to
Right.
you got to make it more organic, as natural as possible. And so I
Hmm.
have to work on me. The dummies, you work with, you get the voice in your head and you go.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So writing for comedy clubs and retirement communities seems like a different thing. Did you have to write do you have two separate shows, or are you able to adjust your one of your shows to fit a different venue?
when I got into comedy clubs, I said this, and this is where a lot of people make a mistake with comedy clubs. People
Mm-hmm.
think, oh, I'm going to go to a comedy club, I'm going to be dirty, I'm going to be Otto and George, and I'm going to be, oh, just curse and this. And unfortunately, if you want to work comedy clubs, they want as clean as possible, believe it or not. I mean, they don't mind you going dirty and stuff like this, but they don't want a whole bunch of F-bombs. I
Right.
remember to this day when I get comedy clubs sending me emails, hey, are you available on this date? Yeah, okay, this club absolutely no F-bombs. This club is a lot of clubs are demanding PG-13. And so the show I do for my retirement communities is basically the same show I do in a comedy club. Now I may,
Hmm.
jazz it up or make it a little more edgy or say a bad word here and there just because
Right.
it's the club. It doesn't really need it, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm I was listening to Dan Horn the other day, and I'm kind of right on the same page as him in the sense of you don't need to use the dirty words. Why use them? If it's funny, it's funny. Doesn't the F word's not going to make it funnier.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the material is what drives it. It has to be relatable, and that's when you're writing material for an audience, it has to be relatable. You have to be able to connect with your audience.
Sure. Did you find that you had to present yourself a different way to the comedy clubs or to the retirement communities, or?
No, not really. Retirement communities that I live in or perform in, I should say, and are 55 and older. And there are
Okay.
very few 55 people in there, but there are some. But
Mm-hmm.
then it's more 60 and above.
Okay.
Um, the area that I do a lot of performing is called the Villages, Florida. They keep me hopping. And I mentioned you before, the
Mm-hmm.
Villages was on the news the other day, and they were talking about this whole COVID thing. And they thought where I lived was going to be a hot spot for all these senior citizens. It was going to be just like they were all going to die. And
Right.
they've had maybe 70, 75 cases in the Villages. Now, the Villages is the size of Manhattan, New York, and they only have 73 cases. Okay. So,
Wow.
yeah. And 73 cases were weeks ago, so I'm sure they're better by now. But
Mm-hmm.
um, they are the same audience that go on cruises. They're constantly cruising. They're maybe
Mm-hmm.
how old are you? You're what?
I'm 19.
19. Okay, so you have grandparents that are probably what, 50s, 60s, 60s?
70s. Yeah.
Oh, 70s. Okay. And they're
Mm-hmm.
pretty still outgoing, yeah?
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, they're active and all this.
Mm-hmm.
And this place, the Villages, is a very active golfing, tennis, pickleball. I mean, you name it, and they're constantly going and doing stuff. So it's a very, very active group. And what I love about them is they remember some of the older comedians when they grew up, like Lenny Bruce or Richard Pryor or Steve Martin, and
Mm-hmm.
they get comedy. So it doesn't have to be squeaky clean. I call my stuff edgy but not dirty, and they
Sure.
love it. Yeah.
Wow. That's great. How do you write, and how is that process of writing something where it's edgy but you stay away from dirty? Because that's a great kind of formula for being able to perform in comedy clubs and those large scale retirement communities.
Yeah, and casinos. I've done some casinos, and
Hmm.
the same thing. You have to have the right material. Um, I did a showcase earlier this year, and I met a comedian named Jeff Shaw, and he's hilarious. And you can
Hmm.
see him on the Dry Bar Comedy if you go to
Okay.
YouTube.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the dry bar. It's great
Yeah,
stuff.
look for Jeff Shaw.
Hmm.
And we were chatting before we got there to the tryouts at the showcase, and we
Hmm.
were talking. I said I always like to ask comedians how they write. What is their method of writing? And he says, I do clean, only clean. I do not use dirty. I don't use curse words. And I said, well, how do you do that? He says, when people start writing comedy or they think they're going to be funny or they're going to go to a comedy club and they want to be funny, the first thing that comes to mind, it's easy to write dirty jokes, a fart joke or something like this, or a dirty word or whatever. He
Right.
says, if you can get past that mentality, he says, and just start writing down things that make you laugh that are not dirty, almost more of an observational kind of thing.
Sure.
He says, then you have to get into that mindset. He says, and keep it clean. Write stuff out. If it sounds dirty, get rid of it or rewrite it. But yeah, it was a pretty good conversation with him. He was like a professor when he talked. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could read this. I could talk into the microphone because it was
Right.
really a schooling. It was great.
Wow. So how would you define, and I'm curious if this has changed over the years, since you've done more shows and gotten more shows under your belt, but how would you define your comedy style? Is it, as a ventriloquist, is it set up punch joke? Is it situational? Is it a combination, or do you have something else that you're that
It's
you
it's it's a little bit of everything. I
okay.
don't think I don't think I get in trouble from other ventriloquists because they say your jokes are too long. I go, yeah, but they're funny. I said I get a big laugh. I posted a joke in World Vent about a couple weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
And it was a long joke, a very
Right.
long joke, but the payoff at the end, if you listen to the laughter afterwards, was 20 seconds. I sat there 20 seconds waiting for them to die down, and then Buddy started back in so we could do the next joke. But what happens is it becomes set up punch, there's storytelling, and then you have the things that happen in there that seem like they're organic, whether it seems like
Mhm.
it's um, an ad lib or you're talking with the audience and now you're pulling the audience into the show.
Sure.
You have to have all of that in order for it to be successful. Because after a while, just set up punch gets kind of old. And
Mhm.
I actually try to work on rewriting my shows because at first it's almost that way. You're almost set up punch because you want to get the quick laugh and just move on, kind of like the Jeff Dunham thing. You want
Right.
to laugh every so many seconds.
Mhm.
But I think when you start creating a character, you can start stretching the jokes out, and you can start adding more of a um, um, storytelling to it. So it becomes, like I said, more the kind of conversation you would have with an old person, you know.
Mhm. It's neat. I remember going back to listening, I believe it was the IVS podcast,
Yeah,
and they had King Groves on there talking about his comedy writing style and how he does a lot of storytelling with his characters because it's easy to remember, and then you also have the joke, and it's easier to, if you're adding a new bit, if you're taking it out, you can just say, oh, okay, I'll just take out that story.
right.
So it's an interesting
Well,
thing.
what's great about that, and Ken's absolutely right, and
Mhm.
I've watched Ken, and I'm like, yes, he does long jokes, you know,
Right.
and what you can do with a long joke that you can't do with a short joke is you can embellish your character, the way he speaks, the way he says. You can draw out the words, but you can also put body movement into that thing, or have him lean over and say, let me tell you, Dan Horn's the
Mhm.
master of that. He'll be telling something and he has a worse and lean over, oh well, hello there. And you're able to bring that character more to life, with body movement, with the way you talk. It's not fast. It's not a set up and punch, but you
Mhm.
know, you hook the audience, and it works. It just works.
Sure. Yeah, what I think is neat about that whole method of delivering comedy is like what you said, where you're able to get that whole character
Yeah,
across to the audience. And so
yeah,
the audience is able to understand, oh, in your case, oh, Buddy is this type of character. And then they also see the way that you're reacting to whatever he's saying. And
right,
it also adds to the comedy and before he even hits the punchline of whatever the joke is, which
right,
is really
right.
a neat thing. Um, what are the crowds like? Do you notice a difference in the crowds for these large scale retirement communities to these ones that you have at comedy clubs? And how do you pander to them, or how do you have the characters react with them? Is there any difference there, or is it
Not
typically
really.
the same?
No, I
Really?
mean,
Okay.
if it works, it works, and it works with everybody. Funny is funny, okay? And
Hmm.
believe it or not, when you go to the comedy clubs, there are a lot more older people than you think. It's usually 45 and up, and
Wow.
you get a lot of retirement community people that will go to comedy clubs. And it's one of those things where I would say 35 and under for me would be
Hmm.
tough because these guys they have their cell phones out and they're kind of like all over the place and they're just not paying attention. But
Sure.
35, 40 and up, they're paying attention. They came out, they spent some money, they have some drinks, and they want to have a good time. And
Hmm.
the one thing is, like I said, I don't change the material that much really for the comedy clubs. And it's always nice when people go, "Oh, it's so nice to see a show where they didn't use the F word all the time." Well, yeah, hey. But my show is different in the aspect that it's not just stand up and it's not just magic and it's not just ventriloquism. It's a combination of all three of them.
Wow. So have you ever experienced heckling, and how do you deal with that?
I let the dummy handle it. And then
Okay.
if it gets out of control, if the person's like really drunk, inebriated, or what have you, usually there's somebody in the club who sees what's happening and they'll escort them out. But yeah,
Okay.
I got, I have some pretty good pretty good lines for hecklers and stuff like that, and it
Sure.
usually gets them to quiet down real quick.
Sure. Well, that's interesting. So, how did you go about integrating the magic aspect into your ventriloquism show?
Well, I don't have a whole, well, and now I do, but then I did not have a whole hour worth of material for ventriloquism.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
but I have a lot of magic, and
Hmm.
I turned my show into people say, "Oh, you're a magician and a ventriloquist," and I say I'm an entertainer. And so my show is more like a variety show where you get a little bit of everything, and I break it up with some comedy, magic, vent, and then some more magic, and then I usually always finish off with vent because I think people just really they love the art, and yeah,
Hmm.
it's it's just you make it give them variety. Too much of one thing. It's like, hey, when I was in college, everyday macaroni and cheese. That's all I could afford.
Hmm.
Too much of a good thing is not good.
Right. Well, we have, in looking at the comments here, we have Dale Brown commented, and he said that he likes the dog barking.
I know. Hold on. I'm going to fix that in a second. My wife knows I am in here doing this, but I'll, I'll fix that. Hold on. Hello? Can you keep the dogs from barking?
While Mike is away, I'd like to say that this Landon Live is brought to
I
you
just,
by Tom
yeah,
Crowd's Learn
I
Dash
just,
Ventriloquism course.
I just told my wife, I said, can you keep the dogs from barking? She looks at the dog. She goes, they're not barking. Oh, not now. They're not. Uh, sorry about that.
Bob Rumba said I would have used background music, but a dog barking is more real.
That was actually, I don't know if you guys picked that up. That was my double distant voice. I was talking,
Wow.
making the barking sound at the same time.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Um, Des Acosta said, "Do the dog barking again." LOL. We have, and then Dale Brown on the topic we were talking about earlier said that clean comedy is so much harder,
It
and
is.
yeah, it's it's definitely a lot
It is,
harder.
but it's much more rewarding too.
Hmm. Do you
Because
find
you
it
go,
easier to write clean comedy since you've developed the character, and how do you go about developing a new character?
I'm not one of these guys who can sit down and just write material. Uh, I,
Hmm.
I'll stockpile jokes. I have these and these and these. You stockpile jokes,
Yeah.
and when you get a character, you kind of start looking through your material and you start trying to um, formulate. Okay, where do you want this to go? Early on, even with my Chinese character, when you're first bringing your dummies out to meet people, they don't know who they are. So you have to almost, in the very beginning of the routine, do an interview, ask them certain questions like, "Oh, where are you from?" and "Oh, how old are you?" Or you're formulating something, and then you can break away from that after the people have established who this person is and his character. But it's
Mhm.
very important to get people to know who he is right away, because if you just come out and start telling jokes, and it's kind of like, you know.
Well, one thing I admire about your performance style and your characters is, well, of course, your characters, but they're very original. Can you talk about
Yeah.
your Chinese character and kind of how he came to be?
You know what? I like characters.
Hmm.
I like a character when you bring him on stage before he says anything, before you say anything, the crowd
Hmm.
is like, "Whoa, you got him!" I got to see what's going to happen now.
Sure.
The Chinese character came about um, when I was a kid. I used to watch Happy Days, and there was a guy named Arnold on there, played by Pat Morita, and he owned the restaurant that all the kids from Happy Days hung out with, and he did the and Pat Morita did not. He was I think Pat Morita may have been Japanese or Hawaiian or anyhow, but he would put on this thick accent, and then growing up a little later, there was the kid from the Indiana Jones movies that would go, "Ah, Dr. Jones, Dr. Jones,"
Yes.
and so I kind of combined the two voices together, and I would
Mhm.
that was a voice I did ever since I was a kid.
Oh,
Ah, look at
wow.
you! Oh, look at you! You are a good one, you know.
Mm.
Um, and I started building material around it, and it, it it came about. It was just one of those things that just happened, and I had a lot of fun with them.
Wow. Were you ever worried that it would come off as offensive?
It's funny. There are only one type of person who ever found my Chinese characters offensive, and those
Hmm.
were the people who were white and uptight. I have people. I remember performing at the convention with the Chinese guy,
Hmm.
and there are some stereotypical jokes in there, but that is comedy, and that's
Right.
one of the things comedy has died over time is because you can't make fun of anything anymore.
No,
But I have gotten such good. I remember the guy. What was his name? Bill Geist. Was it Bill Geist?
I'm not
He
sure.
used to be on the Today Show and stuff. My son's doing the Today Show now, and he was
Okay.
there doing an interview for the Sunday morning show. And he goes, "Do you ever feel like your character would be offensive to people?" I'm like, "No, just uptight white people." He goes, "Well, why do you say that?" I said, "Because that same character and that same routine you've seen me perform, I've performed for and been requested for Asian festivals and stuff like this." He says, "You're kidding
Wow.
me." I said, "No, because they know it's jokes, they can laugh about it, and there's really nothing in the material that is really that
Hmm.
offensive. I mean, the worst offensive joke is maybe him joking around about um, um, what's he talks about his fortune cookie. Confucius, his twin brother Confucius, stole the idea for the fortune cookie, and I said, "How's yours different?" He says, "Mine has a very important message." I go, "Well, let me hear one of your fortune cookies," and he goes, "Okay, fortune cookie number one, very important message." He goes, "I bet you think you just ate chicken, but you didn't." So you know, you, it's not coming out and saying you eat cat or well, the next joke is, um, but it's just one of the things you're playing off stereotypes, and stereotypes come from things that really do happen. And
Sure.
facetious is very popular right now with the oh, Corona. Everybody's ready to make fun of China, but no, I mean, I don't go out there to, and that's the thing. When you look back at Don Rickles, he made fun of everybody, but you don't do it to offend somebody. You don't do it to hurt somebody. You do it to make fun of it. You're joking around, and
Sure.
I always do a thing at the end of my show saying, "Listen, if anything offended you, I apologize. It was not meant here to offend anybody, but to add levity to this crazy
Hmm.
world we live in." So
Sure.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting. You covered a little bit about the comedy aspect of it, but what about the design and the overall look of the character? Because as a puppet builder, that's one of the big things that I look for in other people's work. Can you talk a little
I
bit
uh,
about that?
I originally had a Dan Pays puppet that he made look like Chinese, and then Facetious actually came from Larry LaFonce,
Okay.
and yeah, he made the head, and then I built the body and all the other stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, and that was I don't know how many years ago, but yeah, it worked out good. I mean, the character was perfect, spot on for the material.
Wow.
And then after I did that at the convention, Alfaro and everybody else started making Chinese figures. So it was all right. I must have did something right. Somebody's copying me.
Yeah, you're
So
like, where's my cut, guys? Come on.
yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Do you travel out of state, or where you
Yes.
travel and do show? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any stories for any flight stories?
Um, one flight story was I was sitting in three seats. I had the window seat. Two people next to me were deaf,
Hmm.
and but no big deal. But they were on their iPads and they were trying to figure out how to hook up to the Wi-Fi so they could watch a movie or play a game or something on their little tablets.
Sure.
And the husband and the wife are going like pointing at the thing, and she's going like this, and they can't understand how to work it. And so I tap her on the shoulder, and I don't speak sign language, but I do speak international sign language. Was I pointed at it, went money, it costs money, and they like
Right.
you know, and I kept sitting there thinking to myself, how how horrible it must really be to be deaf because you can't enjoy ventriloquism or music or anything
Right.
like this until halfway through the flight when the people behind us with the crying baby uh, screaming friggin' head off and they're sleeping like babies. And I'm like going, the one time I'd like to be deaf is right about now. So,
Oh man.
but that was a trip to Michigan. I was doing the Island Grand Resort in Michigan in February, and there was a polar vortex going through. So we get to Michigan, they get me into the casino and all this, and I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, this is nice. Put me up in a room, go down, get free food, and oh yeah. So I figured, well, 6:30, got the show the next day. I'm gonna go shower and get ready for bed. Wouldn't you know, the polar vortex came through. We lost power. There was no hot water. There was no electricity. He was sitting in a room freezing. It was freezing in
Oh
that room.
man.
Yeah, till about 3, 4 in the morning, and then the power finally came back on.
So when you travel with your show, I mean, is it
Yeah.
is it like a 45-minute show that you do, or
I still do
versus
about
an
an hour.
hour? You still
Yeah, I
do an
still do an
hour?
hour.
And
Yeah.
how many
Well,
characters is that? Is that like three or four? Or?
I take one character,
Oh,
and one character I may bring the mask just for backup,
mm,
um, if I need something. But it's comedy magic, and then of course some stand up in the very beginning of the show,
sure.
and you know I layer it: comedy, magic, ventriloquism, comedy, magic, ventriloquism. So it's kind of a
So you've never had one of those stories where the puppet gets lost or something happens? You're always like
no.
super cautious, probably. Yeah.
I've had a show where the string broke on the lever, but
Oh, wow.
middle of the show, but I was able to get in there, at least grab it and pull it like this, and close the show out fairly quick from there.
Sure.
But and that's why when you're doing a show, you always have to be prepared for the unexpected. So I usually don't do the mask bit. It's going to be a long time before anybody does the mask bit now, but
Mm,
um, the mask is always in the case just in case something happens. And say you have a 30-minute, I have a 30-minute act with Buddy, and halfway through the string breaks. Boy, what am I going to do now? Well, I know I got 15, 20 minutes with the mask, so that's
wow.
their backup. So it's always
I
been,
see.
yeah,
Wow. That's great. I want to talk. We kind of touched on character creation with
yeah,
Confucius, but could we bring out Buddy? And I would
yeah.
love to hear a little
Oh,
bit about Buddy and how he
you want me to
came to be.
explain it to him before I bring him out?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, Buddy, once again, was one of those voices I did when I was younger. It started out as a joke. I would do physical therapy during the day and do all
Hmm.
my shows in the evening time. So it's a beautiful situation. And if I got to travel and go someplace, I just use PTO time and take the day off or a week off or whatever. Um, but I work in a physical therapy office, and I used to, on slow days during the summertime when the snowbirds went home, I would call up the clinic and I would pester the front office people and saying, "Oh, my doctor sent me in, so I need some physical therapy." "Okay, sir, and we're going to need your social security number." "Oh, right here. 172 LMNOP QRS, sir. That's not my social security number. And so that was Buddy. I was doing Buddy before Buddy even came along.
Oh,
And Buddy
wow.
was also the voice I would use on telemarketers. "Hello. Yeah. Who's this? Oh, did I call you? Oh, you called me. What do you want? Hi, I'm Buddy." And it would be the forgetful kind of guy who would just,
Hmm.
you know, these guys couldn't hang up on you. "What's your name?" My
Hmm.
name is Fred." "Really? That's my name." "No, my name's not Fred. What the hell am I talking about?" And these people would be on the other line laughing and then eventually have to hang up because they knew they weren't getting anywhere. So it was always fun.
That's hilarious. I love getting those telemarketer calls too because they're like so mad. Like I always play because my voice is higher pitched. I always
Yeah.
do the old lady voice, and you hear, "Ma'am, do you live in a stable environment?" "No, dear, I'm not a horse." You just like keep going with them, and it's great because you just, well, I have to ask my husband George. He's not around right now, but I can get back to you. It's so nice to hear from you. I don't hear much from anyone anymore.
Exactly. And you
It's
could just play that whole thing
oh.
out. I
And
used
you
to, I
find
had buddies.
yourself writing down jokes too, because you're like,
Oh
this is
yeah.
hilarious. Yeah,
Record, always record. Uh,
exactly,
I
exactly.
had a thing. Buddy was on the phone. Hello, the phone rings. It's a telemarketer. "Hello, who is this? Oh, this isn't the carpet cleaning guy, is it? Huh? Oh, well, let me ask you a question. Do you know how to get blood stains out of the carpet?" Like, so
That's
yeah, you can have a
great.
lot of fun with them. Yeah,
Wow. So some of Buddy's personality kind of started from that, and as well as his voice.
absolutely.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I used to love Buddy Ebsen on the Beverly Hills Billies, but I just couldn't do the
Hmm.
Southern accent. But I just, ooh doggy, but I think Buddy, the name Buddy Ebsen and Buddy, and
Sure.
everybody knows somebody. And hey, what's up, Buddy? How you doing, Buddy? Good to see you,
Yeah.
buddy. I told Mike,
Exactly.
love you, buddy. Stuff like that. There's the
Wow.
dog again.
Well, that's great. So why practicing on your distant voice? So what was it with the character of Buddy that made you want to shy away from the typical old man puppet that you see most of the ventriloquists use?
Um, I don't know if there was anything particular that I could put my finger on that say that I think it was just the character it was building. I almost when Buddy was first kind of being created, I had the voice, but I was gonna almost have him in the beginning kind of be like you know Norm Crosby, or are you too young?
I'm too young.
As the liver spots explode on my hand there. Let me tell you about a comedian named Norm Crosby. Norm Crosby was the kind of guy, the comedian, who always said the wrong words.
Okay.
Like um, I can't think of him right now, but he would use the wrong word for what he was saying.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought Buddy would be like that, but as you can see, it's hard for me to come up with some of those Norm Crosbyisms. I said it was just too hard to write those, and I may work on it again. But Buddy's just one of these guys because I work in around a lot of retired people. It's you would see so many different people, and I was always drawn to these poor people who they couldn't really take care of themselves, and they were just so funny. They would, where did I put my teeth? They're in your mouth. Oh, there they are. They were just kind of absent-minded, but they were fun and they were nice, and they would tell you the best
Right.
story. And yeah, that's
Wow.
that's kind of how I wanted Buddy.
Oh, that's great. Well,
Endearing is what I wanted to be.
sure, sure.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I always think a character is great when you can describe it with a few adjectives. Jeff Dahmer's Walter is grumpy. Buddy is endearing. He's
yeah,
he's that fun, loving old man character. We're very different. So could we see Buddy?
sure.
Okay,
Let me get him
fantastic.
up.
And while Mike is getting Buddy, make sure to go ahead and comment any questions you have for him or for Buddy, as we see. That's great. Dan Satchoff said, hardest working guy in show business. And then Steve Petrus said, can we see the dog? And then earlier, Bob Rumba had said, that's no dog, that's your wife. Secret talent.
Oh, he knows his wife, does he? Where are you looking at? Where am I looking? Oh, there. Oh, hey, where? Oh,
Hi, buddy. How are you?
hi. Who is that? That's
My name.
Landon Harvey. That's Landon Harvey, huh? Landon Harvey. It doesn't look like Harvey Weinstein to me. Landon Harvey.
Yeah, I hope not. Well, Buddy's great, and also is he created from wood?
Yes,
Or
he's carved out of wood. He has some sculpt over on him because I wanted a different nose on him.
sure.
I got him. He was pretty much what I wanted. There was a few things though that I want to change, so I sent him off to Chance Wolf, and
Hmm.
Chance did some upgrades on him for me and all that, and got the hair on and the brows and stuff like this, and
Oh,
so
wow.
uh, and yeah. So I mean, he just looks like that great
I
grand
love the
guy.
blank stare that he's got, even without even adding any movement. You kind of bring him out, and he's got this kind of blank,
And now
blacked out hair.
the amazing thing with him is everybody talks about his eyes when his eyes move,
Hmm.
and then his brows go up, and this camera thing backwards is killing me. It's like, oh, there you are. There he is right there. He's right there, I know. Oh, he's just, technology is, oh, that's what technology does to him. And his camera going backwards.
Wow. Well, he's great. When did you decide that you wanted to add the rod puppeteering aspect to Buddy's character?
Well, I was doing the one thing that came out of the elbow, and the other one always looked like it
Okay.
had a stroke. And then I always saw Dan Horn do Orson. Then I saw Max Fulham with his little character. And I'm like going, I have never seen a ventriloquist use both arms on the figures. Here they
Hmm.
are right there, and I washed them earlier today so I can touch my face and not get corona. and but yeah, it just brings so much more life to him. Like he'll tell a story where he's pointing out there, and then he tells a joke. Oh, she she threw herself at me, and I pushed her away. So he can use both arms, bring both arms into it, and it just adds to his persona. It just brings a, honestly, as I get older, my lip control is not as good as it used to be, and it
Hmm.
doesn't matter when he's performing, when he's on and he's talking. I can be well. They're not looking at me; they're looking at him.
Right.
So, yeah. Any
That's
questions you
phenomenal.
got?
Another thing I like about one of the things I like about the soft hands on Buddy is that he can touch his face or he can gesture, and you don't have to worry about the hands clacking. Of course,
Yeah,
they're
and
also lighter, but
he he does a thing where he does this. It's hard to see up here. I do a thing where
uh
he does like um, a Jack Benny where he puts the hand on the face, or the Johnny Carson thing. So you
hmm
can just get so much. Dan Horn's course I took on puppet manipulation, so I could learn how to use these rod arms. And Dan is so far ahead of time, into the future with this stuff. He's so far
he's
ahead
a
of his time.
genius. Yeah,
Yeah, and I see myself just using the arms, and I'll watch the video and say, "Oh, I got to move his body more." And the hard bodies can't move as much as the soft bodies, so I'm never going to
right.
get that same kind of movement.
hmm
But man, watching it sometimes, I'm like going, "Man, he looks so alive," and that's the comments I get. And it's
Yeah,
just using the other arm now.
yeah, that's fantastic. Looking back at the comments, we have hilarious entertainments said, Mike, what is the least? Oh, well, this is about figure building. We can talk a little bit about that. And he said, what is the least enjoyable aspect of figure building to you, or maybe the most tedious, or something that?
um, everything. Um, I'm gonna go put Buddy down real quick, and I'll
Oh,
answer
sure.
the question.
Thank you for bringing Buddy out. He's
Oh, you're welcome. You're joking me. Hold on, I gotta get. Um, figure making, it can be a lot of fun, and when you're when you're new to it and you start making the puppets and all this, it's like, yeah, you're really gung ho. After you make several,
yeah.
it's like, oh boy, all right. And it's just very long. It's a drawn out process. People don't understand how many hours and how much time it takes to make one of these figures, really, from the sculpt to, and as you're sculpting, you're trying to figure out, I have to sculpt this just right so the mechanics will work right.
Right.
Then the molding, then the casting. Then the casting, you got to still fill in and sand, and then you got to cut all
hmm
the pieces out. You got to make everything is made or fabricated. And even if you're making the same puppet, you're doing two at the same time, you're still having to fabricate. And even though you have a cast to the head, no two are ever exactly the same. One cast may be a slight bit thicker or a little bit thinner. So the rods
hmm
that you're putting in there may have to be, adjusted. But
Oh, wow.
it's just so time consuming. And people say, I don't understand why they're so expensive. Well, there's a reason: the time and the quality and the professionalism and just the art of them. When
hmm
you look at guys like Selberg, and you look at guys like Chance Wolf, and you look at guys like Ray Gwill, who put out
hmm
these fantastic figures, but they were very expensive. And there's good reason. I mean, you're buying a piece of art. You can go to eBay and you can pick up the little Goldberger, to get started, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
A matter of fact, I'm working on something for a beginner figure, a beginner ventriloquist, and it's a figure that they can make, or they possibly, if I make some of them, it's be very limited ones I make, because hopefully with this virus being gone, shows are going to pick back up.
hmm
But it's just so time consuming, you just don't have time for it.
Sure.
But I would say the most tedious part of figure making are the two things: filling and sanding, filling and sanding, filling and sanding, filling and sanding, and then the paint. Because the paint,
Yeah.
you get everything looking just right, and then you screw one thing up, you got to start all over.
Yeah. If I'm correct, you've helped out Chance Wolf on some projects. Is that right?
It's funny. I don't know, 5 years or more now. Chance
Wow.
called me. He was talking about figure making and all this stuff, and at that point, I think I had already done the course for Mare Studios. I did a course on how to build your own ventriloquist figure from start to finish. And yeah, he called up and we were talking. He was interested, and I saw some of his work, and I was like, wow, this guy is the real deal. And so, you start helping him out and teaching him stuff, and he gets into it, and he's just like all of us. We get
Sure.
figures crack into the head, and we see what's going on inside of there.
hmm
And really, people say, "Oh, you stole this from me, or stole from me." Everybody stole from somebody.
mm
Whether it was Mac, or whether it was Marshall, whether it was the McElroys, the Cadillac of old dummies. I mean, those guys were
Yeah.
so far ahead of their time. Um, but the neat thing about Chance that I like about him is I see him doing some stuff that is classic, but he's also putting his own spin on stuff, especially mechanics, especially with the control post. he has it ergonomically set up. So a lot of figures makers would make the control post where you put it, hey, I got room here, let's put a control here. I got room over here, let's put it over here. And they may have not been the right place or hard to get. And you just never use that feature. But he's got it. It's kind of neat. You got the mouth, the eyes, and then the thumb can hit winkers, blinkers, brows, and stuff like that. So it's all right there, which is really, really interesting, really neat.
Wow. Can you talk about some of the projects that you and Chance have worked on together?
Oh, we did when he was first, he's done some stuff for Terry Fader, and I am a
Mm.
rotocaster, and he sent me, we did the Michael Jackson figure.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yes, I got the clay head, and I did the mold and the cast, and I sent him the casts out to his house, and then he made the Michael Jackson figure. So that was kind of
Wow.
interesting. Um,
That
as
must
far
have
as
been difficult shipping a clay head through the mail.
he had this box, and he sent it through FedEx, and I had to go pick it up at FedEx because he insured it and all this stuff, and he had this box, and I think an atomic bomb could have went off, and it wouldn't have busted the box part. And I had to
Wow.
unscrew it with a screw gun and ratchets and all this, and there was this clay head, and everything was perfect on it, and so
Wow.
it was pretty cool. So, but yeah, we got some ideas of some things we want to make in the future.
Yeah,
Him make, not me, just ideas of mine. But
sure.
he throws in his ideas, and Jimmy V is another mastermind. He throws in some ideas. So it's neat to bounce ideas off of people and get ideas. I think I was talking to you about bouncing some ideas about you and
Yeah,
having you make some.
exactly.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
I think
always love. Go ahead.
no, I said I just love bouncing ideas off people. Even with my material, there are a few people in the event community that I really trust with their opinion. Like, hey, what's wrong with this joke? Ah, it stinks. That's what's wrong with it. Okay, I'll go back to rewriting it. And you don't get offended because you know they're there to help you out. Now they're not trying to be mean, and they usually aren't like that. They don't say you stink, but they're like, well, there's something missing. That's too long, or it's not funny, or the payoff's not good. And you sometimes you say, yeah, you're right. Sometimes you go, oh, I don't know. I'm just getting your opinion. I'm going to try it once or twice. And if it works, I'll keep it in. If it doesn't work, then we'll toss it. You know, that's how it works.
I'm curious, have you ever had a character not work?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheeky boy, cheeky boy. I mean, cheeky
Mm,
boy was good for maybe 10 minutes.
right.
And after that, it just got old.
Hmm. Wow. Well, looking at the comments, going back to when we were talking a little bit about Buddy, Steve
Yeah.
Petra had commented, a lot of old man characters have small, partially open, or even closed eyes, but Buddy's wide eyes and
Hmm.
thick brows give him a unique alertness that really fits his personality. And I agree on that, Steve
Yeah.
Petra.
I wanted Buddy to have that. I didn't want him to have the brows are key with that because how many times have you seen these eyes that are like, and they look like they're psycho killer dummy? He
Hmm.
gets away with it, and I think maybe it's because the eyes are a little bit lighter and the eyebrows are bushy and they come down a little bit and cover a little bit. Um, I just wanted one of these people that's like, "Hello, how are you?" Just kind of, "I'm fine." It just, I can't explain what it is, but you see people like that, and they're like, "Oh, huh,"
Oh,
it's
sure, sure, where they've got this kind of old person innocence to them almost.
That's exactly the word. It's innocent.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's like a child is innocent, then we grow up and we become adults, and
Right.
we don't have that innocent anymore. But then we get to that certain age where all of a sudden things start becoming new again. We become forgetful and we have that innocence about it.
Sure,
And
sure.
that's a good part of Buddy. I think people really relate to him because either they know somebody like him, just like Jeff Dunham's Walter,
Hmm.
or they have a family member like this person, and it's just so relatable. Steve on another interview was talking, and I don't we never got around to it, but we'll have that interview one other time. Um, he talks about a three-legged stool. We've talked about this, and he's got to explain that, not me. But writing the material, you have to write for the audience. You don't write for yourself. Um, what will the audience like? It's material, audience, performer. Material, audience, performer. Um, if I'm writing for myself, what I think is funny, it may not even go over good for the audience. So you always want to try to write for your audience.
Sure. Definitely. Bob, we have a comment from Bob Rumba. He said, "How long does he spend on making Wait, what? How long does he spend on making something to tell his wife? Oh, how long does he? I get what he's saying now. Bob Rumba commented, "How long does he spend on making something tell until his wife wants to kill him or starts barking?"
You know what? I'm at that point with my wife now where I go, "Hey, can I show you a magic trick?" And this is every character, every dummy. I could bring in a Charlie McCarthy or Mortimer Snood or Walter. I could bring in any dummy at all and go, "What do you think?" They all look the same. Everyone doesn't matter. I could have the Chinese guy and Buddy next to each other. Yeah, they look the same. She's at that point with me. Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
and then she barked.
Well, do you have a fun, one of your favorite stories that when someone asks you about being a performer, you look back on saying, wow, that was a really neat gig, or I wish I could do that again?
I have some bad gigs. Oh my goodness, but I
Yeah,
have
share one of those and then share a good one. I'd love to hear the
I
contrast
did
there.
I can't. You know what? It was so. I've had a couple. One I had to do with a huge audience, and they had me at the end of the night after all the award ceremonies were, and it was the last night of this convention, which was a week, and everybody was just ready to go home.
Hmm.
And they had me on stage, tiny stage, and the room. If you think of a banquet room in a hotel, pretty
Sure.
big, and they got those walls that go up, but they can collapse in and out.
Hmm.
Well, when I walked in there, I saw the stage and I saw the room. I said, okay, this is going to be a great crowd. This is going to be a good room. When I get there to perform, those walls were gone. So I had like 1,500 people in there. And I'm on this little stage up front that's not even really elevated, but maybe 16 inches. And I have a 20-foot, no, probably more than that, maybe 20-foot by 20-foot dance floor between me and the audience. Nobody can see me. They can hear me. Hey, sir, can you come pick a card? It was
Yeah, that's
horrible.
what a real throwing your voice is like.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
got that distance, yeah, man.
So, but that was horrible. One of the funniest shows I ever did for a gentleman's club, not
Hmm.
like a gentleman's club, but a club that old gentlemen went to.
Right.
Um, I get there, it was a rainy night, and these guys were in there, and this club was old. I mean, old. I mean, when the spotlight came on, they all stood up and started walking toward it. Old, and this guy I had come up and help me with a magic trick, and the trick was this, and this is many years ago where you fill a thing up with water, and then you put a lid on it, a cardboard top. Then you flip it over and you put it on top of the guy's head, and then you pull the thing out, and it says "Do not remove." And the water's supposed to be dripping down, but no water drips down, and then you have the water
Right.
come out at the elbow later on. Well, I flipped the can the wrong way, and I have it on top of the guy's head, and he's holding the board, and all this water is just running down his face and onto his shirt. And I pull the card away, and it just goes whoosh like this, and the
Oh
guy's just
man.
standing there like this, like nothing's happening, like he didn't know water was just running, and he just sat there, and I made a joke of it. Oh, thank you very. It was like, buddy. Oh, thank you. That was a great trick. Good. I screwed up the trick. The guy is soaking wet, and he didn't even realize it. It was. It
That'd
was
be a hilarious bit. You have Buddy do a trick and he thinks everything went well and it like totally screws up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's what I want to do is I want to do some shorts with Buddy, like videos where stuff you can't do on stage because it has to be edited and stuff like this. I have some really cool ideas for doing some shorts that like 1 minute, maybe 1.5 minute things that would be on
Mhm.
like YouTube or something like that.
Sure.
Incorporate
Yeah.
all the features.
Yeah. Let's see. Steve Axtell said, "Take a chance on the wolf." We already talked about that, Steve, but
Yeah,
you can watch it back in the interview. Um, so what are you working on? I mean, we've got all this free time now.
yeah.
Everyone's posting what they're up to, new things that they're getting into figure building or working on their material or introducing a new character and working on that. What are you working on right now?
I'm working on the act for sure. I'm working
Mhm.
on more material. I'm working on some new magic, some new illusions that I can do in the show that I'm making, so nobody else will have them. I'm trying to keep my show as original as possible. That
Okay.
way, when people say it, it's like they won't say, "Oh, a magician was here the other day and we saw the same trick." I don't want that to happen, so I try
Right.
to keep all my tricks as original as possible. Um, and then I am playing around with a couple of figures and dummies and stuff like that right now.
Mhm.
I'm working on.
Awesome.
You want to see the little one I'm working on now?
Yeah, that'd be great. We'd
All
love to
right.
see it.
And there he is there.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah, I'm gonna sculpt. I think I'm gonna do sculpt on hair with him, like Frisch's big boy.
Hmm. Yes.
So yeah, what are you doing there? Good to see you there. Who's that right there on the television there? Who is that? Yeah.
I love the color of the suit and how it, you know, how it
Yeah,
contrasts with his eyes and everything. I love that. It's
yeah,
great.
I thought he would be like a little lounge singer or something like that, or he's going to prom, or who knows, but
Sure.
just something a little different. It
It's
kind of
great.
reminded me of his look. Kind of has a Disney-ish look to him, or an old
Yeah,
school. I wanted him to kind of have that retro kind of vibe to him, the old Danny
exactly.
O'Day kind of jacket like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's all I'm working on there, and I'm working on a.
Steve Axtell said, "Great painting," and then he also said that sculpted hair rocks.
Oh, thank you.
And then he
That
also he also has a question for you, Mike. He said, "How does Mike keep up those big guns?"
Oh my goodness, I'm shrinking like crazy. I'm down like 20 pounds. I'm like, my stomach's not shrinking. Everything else is. I haven't been into the gym in like months. This quarantine's killing me. But yeah, you got to stay healthy, man. When you're doing a lot of stuff on the, I work 40 hours a week, and then I'm on the road doing nighttime shows. And
Wow.
busy season, I'm on the road 4 or 5 days a week, doing these shows. And so you got to get workout when you can and eat right as much as you can, and which I have not been doing lately. But yeah, you got to keep up with yourself.
How do you keep the balance between your day job and then your shows? I mean, especially when you're adding something new to it or working on you know perfecting a bit.
Well, I'll let you in on a little secret because I do physical therapy. I'm interacting with a lot of patients, and sometimes I'll have a room of like we may have 4 or 5 patients in the room, and so I work on material with them. And
Hmm.
if I get the reaction I'm looking for, then I start working it into the act. So I kind of have a beta test ground with these patients that are coming in, and my coworker he'll hear the joke in the morning and he'll throughout the day, and then he'll hear it at the end. And by the end of the day, the joke tends to be really working good. And it's because it could just be one word. It could just be the way you set up the joke. It could be the tempo. There's so many things that could be that can make the joke not work. And then sometimes, of course,
Sure.
you just get the wah 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 wah. This doesn't go over, and you just forget that. Or there's a lot of jokes that sound funny in your head, and that's the thing about writing material is it sounds funny in your head, and it sounds funny when you're writing it out.
Hmm.
When you say it out loud, all of a sudden you're like going, that doesn't sound funny at all.
Right. Well, it's interesting. Are you still able to convey these character driven jokes? I because you also have, I believe, is her name Roz that you have
I have, yeah, Roz. Roz
Roz.
is one. Roz, I love Roz. I'm working on cleaning Roz up. Roz was basically really for the comedy clubs, and so she gets a bit raunchy. So I'm working on cleaning her act up
Hmm.
and still being edgy because believe it or not, the retirement community people love the edgy stuff. They don't like dirty, but they love edgy. So
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
but a joke that I might have, I know is going to work for Buddy. Like, Buddy, what did you used to do? And these are jokes that I'll work out in in the therapy. You'd be like, this would be a joke for Buddy. You'd be like, and I would tell a patient, yeah, when I was younger, I said I used to be a lifeguard until that blue kid got me fired. So that's a bit of a groaner because it's a thinker.
Yeah.
Blue kid, he drowned. See,
Hmm.
and that's why we test it out in therapy before it goes on stage.
Right.
But I kept thinking to myself, I said it would be so funny if throughout the show, Buddy would talk about all these jobs that he failed at. Oh, I used to be a lifeguard till that blue kid got me fired, and stuff like that. And he says it so nonchalantly, and people have to think about it. But,
Hmm.
you know,
Well, that's another thing too, is because it's the it's a joke, but it's also the character and the character talking about its backstory. You don't have to have the puppet milk the audience for a laugh.
Right.
You can have him say it in a nonchalant manner, and then
Right.
they pick up, oh, it's a joke, and it's also his character, and that's why it's even funnier.
Well, that's the thing, and I've said this, I don't know for how long. I can tell a joke and it's not funny. The dummy tells a joke, it's hilarious, and it's
Hmm.
always that way. Always been that way.
Yeah. Jimmy V commented, that happens to me all the time. Mike is the king of the long format story joke.
Yep, that's true.
And then Steve Axtell commented, love Roz, and with 3 exclamation marks.
Uh,
Yeah, she's a hilarious character.
tell Steve that she loves him too.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you came up with the Roz? Because I love how original your characters are.
Roz was based off. Okay, now I have a friend named Joe LaPenna, and he's
Mhm.
Italian, and I'm Italian. And I was like, Joe, I said, I want to come up with a character based on an old aunt of mine in New York. Okay. And, it was one of those things when people say, you do a lady? And they go, yeah. I go, yeah. This, well, how do you do a voice for a woman? Is that hard to do? I said, you don't seem to understand. My aunt was a chain smoker, one in, the other hand up. I mean, just constantly. She was
Right.
chimney. And when we would go to visit her as kids, you'd walk in there. She'd have the mole, just like Raj. She's got the mole. She got 3 hairs sticking out. Okay.
Hmm.
Now,
Man.
my aunt, originally Roz had red hair. She had curlers in them because that's the way my aunt was. And no matter where, it could be Easter Sunday, she showed up at the door with curlers, this bright orange.
Oh,
My
man.
father and my uncle would say, "Oh, the Joker's going to answer the door now," because it was like red, like the Joker from Batman.
Yeah.
And but Roz went to more of a short, butch kind of short, spiky thing because she's now a cougar, But um, originally, my aunt would open the door, and there she was, and she'd go, "Michael, come on over here and give your aunt a hug and a kiss. Come on over here." And I'm like, "No, no." And she'd scratch you with that whisker and all that. But that was the voice I got. Listen here, darling. Okay, we're going to talk about something, and
Yeah.
and then when I think it's very important before I bring any of my characters out, I always do a little bit of an introduction for them.
Okay.
Roz is one of those people, when I bring her out, I said, people ask me how I got started in there. I said, when I was a little boy, I said, I grew up Italian household. Sunday night was pasta night. We didn't have sauce. We had, and everybody in the audience who was Italian would say gravy. And I said, we'd eat and eat till our stomachs got out here like this. Then everybody would go to the living room, sit on the couch covered in plastic and stick. And I said, my aunt and I would build her story up so people would really get to know her and relate to her.
Sure.
I said,
Imagine her in that scenario. Yeah.
yeah, and I said, she actually just moved here to Florida. She's originally from Staten Island, New York, by way of Atlantic City, by way of Boca Raton, Florida, and now she's retired to wherever I'm performing. She's
Right.
here tonight. Would you like to meet her? And they're like, yeah. I kid you not, with Buddy and with Roz, when I do that, I said, would you like to meet her? She's here tonight. I say, come on out, Roz. Everybody does this. You think you're going to see him look at the suitcase. They do this. They turn around because they think she's going to come up from the back of the audience. Everybody turns to see her.
That's
It's so
great.
Yeah, it's so funny.
That's awesome. I love that. Do you ever milk it where you just kind of like wait and then you pull out of the suitcase?
Oh, she's
Yeah, that's
coming.
hilarious. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Steve Axtell just commented. He said, "Give me a kiss, little Mikey."
exactly. That's what she was saying.
and
Give
then
me a little Mikey.
and then Chance Wolf said, "Raunchy Roz rules."
Oh, yeah.
Try saying that as a ventriloquist, man. Oh man, that's great. Well, in wrapping up here, Mike, I'm curious to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts on this. What do you hope to see from the future of ventriloquism?
I just hope it continues to go on the roll that it is. I think, you know, when I go to the convention, I see people that are older than me, and I always hear the stories of, and my father, the same thing. My father, my grandmother, they always talked about Winchell. Winchell was the best. Oh, you got to say. And I was close to 30, maybe mid 20s before I even saw a video of Paul Winchell. And
Oh
said,
wow.
saw him, I was like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. I would say Paul Winchell was the closest thing to if somebody had a split personality or some kind of mental issue, and I don't say that mean. I say that in the sense that he was so good
Sure,
that
yeah.
the splitting that he did, it was like it was like a split personality. It was
Mm.
that good. Jimmy Nelson, I would maybe saw once or twice as on a commercial here and there, but I grew up with Willie Tyler and Lester, and I grew up with Jay Johnson on Soap, and I used to go when that show came on. It was on late at night, and I was very young, and I'd sneak down the hallway and I would look into to see the dummy and all this, and my father would catch me. You want to see the dummy? Yeah, come on in here, and we'd watch it. And
Wow.
when the dummy was off, I went to some other guy. He says, "Yeah, get back to bed now." And we didn't have video recorders back then, so you couldn't go back and watch it. Um,
Right.
you kids are spoiled. Um, and the
And
Willie
we've got
Tyler,
YouTube and all that.
yeah, I know, yeah, we didn't have. I had Willie Tyler and Lester. Every now and then, you'd see him on the McDonald's commercials. He would be on the after school special, and
Mm.
I think the greatest. I mean, I was always inspired by magicians and ventriloquists, but I always leaned more toward the ventriloquism because everybody does the same magic trick. You want to see something different.
Right.
I think maybe I was 8, maybe 9 years old. I saw on HBO. My father brought it home on you know what a VHS tape is, Landon? You know what that is?
Yes, I do. I've seen him in antique shops.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And he put it in, and it was an HBO special called Dummies.
Hmm.
And I saw, and when I saw Sammy King, and when I saw,
One of
uh,
my favorites.
yes, oh my God, when I saw Sammy King, I thought that was the best. I mean, he was the best. And when I saw Aunt Martha and Clarence with Dick Weston, I thought that was
Hmm.
genius. And Willie Tyler was on it. I mean, all these people I'd never seen before. I'm like, oh man, this is great. And that's really when I get a bit hard with it. And so Ron Lucas, I would see on, and that was you didn't see Ron Lucas too often on television. If it was the Jerry Lewis Telethon. He was always on there, and that was the one I would stay up watching the show for hours to catch Ron Lucas, and he was
Yeah.
amazing. And so I didn't have the Winchell and the Jimmy Nelson. I had those three guys basically,
Sure.
and those were the ones who inspired me. And I'm just hoping, as far as what keeps
Wow.
it going, guys like Jeff Dunham, the Darcy Lyns, the Terry Faders, you, like when I saw a picture of you and Darcy together, I said, ventriloquist is safe for the next generation because you guys have got so much talent and you're so
Well,
young
thank
doing
you.
it that, you better keep it going. Um,
Yeah.
it's the youth, and the youth has got to be inspired by the current ventriloquist now.
Sure. Definitely. Steve Axtell just commented this, and I was curious about this too. Who was your magician? Who was a magician that inspired you?
Um, There were a couple. Some of them were not known because they were family. My father was really into magic. He liked close-up magic. He did some illusions and stuff like that too.
Hmm.
Uh,
Sure.
Amateur kind of stuff. Did stuff for like the firefighters club and stuff like that. He never did comedy clubs or anything like that, or got into it professionally. But there was a guy named Don Esposito up in New York, and he was the guy who got me started in magic too. With little, I remember the first thing Don Esposito ever gave me. I was a very small kid, remind you. It was a small plastic magic wand, and it was a little bird that sat on the glass that dipped into the water. And I thought that was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And but Don Esposito became a mentor to my father and to me to a degree at a young age. I mean, for as much as my attention span could hold back then, but he
Sure.
was he was very instrumental in me and my father doing magic. As far as the professional magicians, always loved Harry Blackstone Jr. because I remember seeing him on television. And
Hmm.
when I was doing my shows for a while, even even to this day, to some degree, I always come out like Harry Blackstone Jr. Like he had that deep voice, and we're going to see a show now. He was very professional and so you know. And I said that I want to get that across.
Commanded the stage.
People,
Yeah.
yeah, grab the attention of people. So I liked
Hmm.
him. Doug Henning was the next big thing, and we used to love watching Doug Henning and David Copperfield that came. And I loved as much as I loved David Copperfield and all the amazing magic as a kid, and probably that's why I like him so much back then. Not that I don't like him more now. I think he does the illusions are incredible, but
Hmm.
he used to do his shows, and the shows were almost themed like a Broadway play.
Okay.
There were musicals, and he did
Hmm.
this thing with celebrities from the television, like Cindy Williams from Laverne and Shirley. They would incorporate all these people into the act, and they would have music with it and they would dance with it, and they made it like a Broadway play, and it was just so cool. And he had, if you ever can find it, maybe on YouTube, look for
Hmm.
this David Copperfield. Um, it is it is an illusion. It's telling a story. At the end of it, it'll almost bring you to tears. But he looks at a picture of an old love, and then she appears, and they go, and he's doing magic throughout this bit, and then she goes into the chair. He covers it up like they're playing hide and seek. She's hiding under the chair, and then as he whisks it away, she's gone. And the whole time, the song. Um, oh, what is it? Weekend, I think, in New England or something like that. Barry Manilow's song, and it is so touching and it is so amazing, and that's really what made Copperfield really just explode away from like the Hennings and all this. He just brought it to a
Sure.
whole different level, and
So it pulls on your emotion in a different way than just wowing his audience.
right, it's not
Yeah.
just wow, he cut himself in half and put himself back together. This was really emotional stuff. Yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
But
Oh,
those
well,
three guys
that's
were the three
absolutely.
main magicians that inspired me as far
Wow.
as illusionists and all that.
That's phenomenal. Well, thank you, Mike Palma. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing
Yeah,
your story and coming on here. We've had a lot of fun getting to chat with you and hear your
yeah.
story as well as your technique for creating characters and what you're doing lately. So thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me, and continued success with this interview that you're doing. It's just fantastic, and like I said, when this virus thing is over, I certainly hope you continue doing it. That's for sure.
Definitely, me too. And tomorrow night at 7:30 Central Standard Time, we have Darren Carr. So make sure to tune in.
Oh, that's going to be great.
That'll be
Yeah,
a fun interview as well. We've got a week full of great interviews. After that, we have got King Groves. So
yeah.
we're just going to keep the good times rolling. Thank you guys for tuning in. And thank you, Mike, for being our guest.
Hey, thanks for having me, Landon. Take care,
All right.
buddy.
Bye bye.